to Something for the Turbo, the new weekly podcast brought to you by Unfound, the global platform for the travel-loving cyclist.
Welcome to the show. Today's show is supported by Alpine Specialists Alp Cycles. If you haven't had a chance to listen to the podcast with Aid Hill yet, episode 10, definitely worth checking that out. And do get in touch with them for all your alpine cycling needs. Today's episode, we're talking Everesting and in particular, world records. It's been fantastic to see so many national and world records smashed over the lockdown period. And for a lot of people with the absence of racing, it's been quite refreshing to follow something. Obviously, the guardians of Everesting, Hell's 500, never really intended Everesting to be a competitive thing. In fact, I suppose it was absolute opposite of competition in the ethos of what they were trying to create. But having seen all these records, they themselves have acknowledged that it's been fantastic to sit back and watch athletes give it a crack. With all the records moving and changing so quickly, despite this conversation that we're about to publish today being recorded only a week ago, there's been numerous changes. But when we had this conversation, Lachlan Morton had just completed his first attempt before he redid it in the last couple of days with his new world record of 7 hours, 29 minutes and 57 seconds. And I just think that he's a total legend of the sport when he was faced with a result that didn't sit right with regards to the altitude climb. Rather than moaning, he just got up and did it again, which I think is testament to him. I'm joined by Hannah Rhodes. Hannah is, I suppose, well known within the Gran Fondo scene, absolute unbelievable climber. And a couple of weeks ago, she smashed by over 50 minutes the women's world Everesting record. And at the same time, she took the UK Everesting record, so beating all the men as well, which is absolutely staggering and just incredible achievement. And we basically have a good conversation with her to find out all the details of the ride itself and how she did it. But since then, her record was first broken on the same climb, the UK record, by a gentleman named Tom Stevenson. So well done, Tom, superb effort. And I understand as recent as just a couple of days ago, Mason Hollyman, I think I've got that right, just set a new UK record in 8 hours and 47 minutes and 15 seconds. So chapeau to both those gentlemen. As you'll hear, Hannah is thinking about giving it another crack. I'm not sure if that second one has put it out of sight. But regardless, her effort for the women's world record is quite staggering. We have a brilliant chat around just her preparation, how she went about it, her nutrition and everything else. She's competed in a number of Gran Fondos, winning Gran Fondos all across Europe, and she plans to travel with her boyfriend, who also joined us on the call briefly, Rory Grant. But Rory's won 5 Haut routes and had some podiums in some of the biggest Gran Fondos in Europe and further afield. Actually, he's been on the podium in Taiwan KOM as well. And as a couple, they are absolutely incredible climbers and a lovely couple too. So we will be speaking to Rory in a future episode, but today is mainly catch up with Hannah to hear about her effort, and we really hope you'll enjoy the conversation. Anyway, without further ado, let me bring you the UK's world record Everesting women's holder, Hannah Rhodes. So today on the show, I'm delighted to be joined by Hannah Rhodes, who set the new Everesting world record for women just a couple of weeks ago. And at the same time, she smashed the UK record, which has just been beaten a couple of days ago. Is that right?
Yeah, a couple of minutes on the exact same climb. Someone called Tom Stevenson.
Right, that seems that seems very unfair. So you're gonna have to go and do it again now.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping for a little bit more time to relax and eat takeaway and drink beer. But yeah, I guess I ought to get back to some form of training.
Well, there seems to be Everesting records sort of dropping all around the world. It's been brilliant to watch during lockdown. But before we go on to that, let's rewind a little bit. And I think why don't we kick things off by sort of telling everyone a little bit more about your cycling background, and then we can sort of work towards how we got to this Everesting attempt.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Cool. So when did you pick up the bike? What's your sort of, obviously got a strong background on the bike. Tell us about when you started cycling and how you figured out that you were pretty good at it.
Oh gosh, well, I'm hoping that you're not asking me to remember exact dates. But
No.
I got quite into fell running when I was like about 19. And ended up getting pretty injured doing that. So a couple of years later, got into triathlon and realised that what I actually was quite good at was riding the bike. Because running kept making me injured, and I didn't really have the upper body strength for swimming.
Yeah. So you just carried on the cycling piece.
Yeah. Yeah, it turns out that the running translates very well to riding quite well uphill. It took me a while to get better at the flat stuff, but
So that was quite a natural transition. In fact, that's interesting because you see a lot of runners sort of transition quite nicely onto the bike, particularly if they're climbers, right?
yeah, a lot of the good times on the segments in the UK for women are set by runners, not cyclists.
Really
Yeah, they're
interesting.
the really tough.
Interesting. So you transitioned onto the bike, and did you do much on the race side of things, or what? How did things progress?
Well, I'm not really that into the UK racing. I
Yeah.
got into hill climbing really to begin with, and then the natural progression was to start doing a bit of women's UK road racing, and I did that for like a year, and I'm not very good at it. I can always make it to the end, but if there's more than like 10 people there at the end, I'm about 500 yards back on the sprint.
Okay.
So Rory introduced me to Honda racing abroad, which I'm a lot more suited to.
Great. So you got that the big turbo, the big diesel engine rather than the
Yeah.
sort of punch stuff. Yeah. Well, you seem to have a very strong one of those as well. So you did some Gran Fondo racing abroad. Obviously, you've been very successful in some of the Hout Route series. For those that don't know, talk everyone through those events and B the success you've had there. And I know that Rory's there as well. So we should probably introduce Rory at this stage because you've also had a bit of success in the Hout Route.
Yeah, hello. 3 years ago, I started in the Dolomite when that used to be one of their week-long events, and Hannah actually came out with me for the opening weekend of that. And I remember we agreed at the time that it would be quite cool if we sort of did one together, and hopefully win one together. So the following year, we both did the Pyrenees event. What was that? 2018, probably.
Yeah.
So did the Pyrenees in 2018 together, and both won it, which was just not really looked back.
Obviously, both. Oh wow, I've got a bit of an echo there. I don't know if you can hear that. Obviously, both very suited to climbing. Both climbers. You mentioned you were in lockdown in the Peak District. Obviously, a good time to train. How did the idea of doing an Everest come around, Hannah?
I just kind of fell into it when we came back to the Peak District. I've been trying to quit cycling for a while, but during lockdown there just isn't that much else to do. So I kind of fell into it as a healthy alternative to just eating and drinking. It turns out if you fall into it with your boyfriend, who is a very good cyclist himself, you're going to end up going on quite a lot of long, hard rides. So
you had like a personal motor pacer.
Yeah.
She loves the suffering, regardless of what she might say. She does love the suffering.
Well, she must do to set that time, but we'll come on to that in a sec. So I know that you've got quite a mathematical background, if I'm right in saying, haven't you? Talk me through the science of picking the segment Kirkstone Pass in the Lake District? How did you decide that was going to be the hill that you attacked the record on?
Well, it was not overly. It wasn't overly technical. Like I didn't do anything really fancy. We just kind of picked out a few things that were going to be key, and then did a bit of exploring on the Strava segment search. So obviously, you want something that's pretty. You want something that's pretty straight for the descent. I wasn't quite sure about what the ideal gradient would be, so I more went off how close I could be to how much time I could have on the Quam and still be within the 10 hours, which was the women's record at the time. Kirkstone Pass looked pretty good for it.
Yeah, so Kirkstone Pass it's 10.9%, is it?
Yeah, I've had a look since actually, since my record was broken, and I got the climbing is quite a lot quicker the steeper that gets. So the top half of Kirkstone Pass is significantly steeper than that, and for the same power, I was getting significantly more climbing per second on each of my reps. So I'd maybe pick a slightly steeper climb next time.
Yeah, do you think that's a personal thing down to the individual athlete? Because I noticed that obviously Lachlan Morton smashed the world record for the men yesterday, and that was an 11% climb as well. But I wonder if there is a deviation depending on what kind of athlete you are.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that maths would be quite a lot more complicated to do than the very basic analysis that I did choosing my climb.
Yeah, okay. Again, a little bit like Lachlan Morton, you weren't actually planning on doing the record attempt that day, were you? Was it more of a recce ride? Am I right in saying that you went up to the Lake District with your dad?
Yeah, I'm not really great with pressure, so the pressure was kind of starting to build in my head. I went with the intention that if I was feeling good, that I'd like carry on and do
Yeah.
it.
Okay, fair enough. So you obviously did it and did it very well. Now, I've asked a few people a number of questions, and people have all sorts of questions that we want to get into in terms of nutrition and the importance of descending. But the question I have is, on an event like that, you were pretty much solo. What are you thinking about for 9 hours and 8 minutes? What's going through your head?
It's funny because, well, Rory says that I just have an incredibly high boredom threshold, but as a person, I actually spend quite a lot of time thinking.
Yeah.
During an Everest attempt, you actually, like during a hard Everest attempt, you don't get a lot of time to think, which is an odd thing to say because you're out on the bike for 9.5 hours. But to be honest, most of the time you're just thinking about when that repetition of the climb is going to be over.
Wow. I'm just trying to think about it mentally. So are you sort of trying to break it down into, okay, just got to get this halfway up and then to the top and then get back down, and sort of just break each segment down bit by bit?
Yeah, I was kind of the first half of it isn't so bad because it wasn't so steep. The second half is quite a bit harder, and it's the second half. So for quite a lot of the second half, I was just waiting for the climb to be over. Yeah, and then I guess it's like I was more breaking it down into, well, I've done 2 hours, so I've got I've got 7 to 9 hours to
7 or 8
go.
to go.
I did actually spend a little bit of time doing the maths in my head as well, like whether I was on pace or not. So yeah, I spent a little bit of time doing maths, but not.
Yeah, great. Well, that probably distract me trying to do maths in my head for 9 hours. That'd be a nightmare. So, and again, also I read that descending is an important part of setting a good time. Is that something you considered prior, and how important a part of your Everesting attempt was the speed of the descents?
I knew that I had like a reasonable amount of time to play with within sort of the first 2 hours of my attempt. And like the more that the time went on, the more I knew what was important was not cracking. I probably could have saved seconds at like 10 seconds a time on the descent, but because I knew I'd got more time, it wasn't in my head so much as it would be in someone like that Lachlan Mawson's head when the time.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting. You're basically constantly managing yourself throughout the effort, aren't you? There's many things to consider. It's such a long effort that people don't normally do such long efforts, that you're constantly sort of tweaking your expectations or managing. It's mastering managing yourself through the time, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, I've had shorter effort. This is going to sound weird, but I've had shorter efforts which have felt longer. Like if I've got a really big ride with Rory and I know I'm going to be out for like 7 hours, that's really long, and I'm like managing how I'm going to feel for the next 2 hours and when the cafe stop is going to come and how I'm going to cope with the last 2 hours when Rory isn't tired and I am. But because this is such a constant effort, there's less of that almost. You've got a better sense of how you're going to feel in the next 2 hours because, well, you're just going to do the climb 8 times.
Yeah. How many reps was it for you in the end? It was 27, 26?
Oh, that's slightly dodgy reporting. It was 37.
37. Oh my word. Okay, so you were someone had dodgy reporting and taken 10 reps off you. That's a bit gutting, but 37 reps. Okay.
So Cycling Weekly can take the credit for that.
I think
Okay, yeah,
Vela UK should take.
Well, Cycling Weekly and Vela UK. I think Cycling Weekly copied the error from Vela UK. So yeah. So, GCN picked up on it afterwards as well.
See, that's how fake news spreads, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Hannah, tell me, the other thing that I find interesting on these big Everesting events is did you have a nutrition strategy, or are you just trying to eat as much as you can? What did you eat and how did you pace that?
Yeah, I actually had a spreadsheet. I knew that probably the most that I could fit in was like 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour. And that I'd probably recommend testing that rather than just guessing, which is what I did. I set up a spreadsheet and put in everything that I was going to eat and then checked that about every hour I'd be eating like 70 to 80 grams of carbohydrate.
Okay.
And then I just kind of packed that into a box and into my back pocket to put it at the bottom of the climb. and tried to eat something every 2 reps. It was actually more difficult than I was expecting. I love eating, but I just felt so sick the entire time.
Yeah, it's that difficult balance, isn't it? You know you need to eat, but it's probably the last thing in the world you feel like doing.
Yeah, that started to get quite difficult towards the end.
Yeah, I can well imagine. Forcing yourself almost.
Yeah, towards the end, I had like this big packet of Haribos, which normally I would love to eat, and I thought I was just going to get through at the end. And I felt like I'd eaten so many of them, but looking back, the packet is like almost full. Yeah, I didn't manage to get very many down at all.
Yeah. And talk us through the weather on the day. Did you have good conditions for it?
Yeah, quite a few of the Everesting attempts recently have been done on quite hot days, which was something that I was aiming to not do because I know that I don't deal well with the heat anyway. And an Everesting attempt is hot. Like every single, like most of the time, you're working at such an intensity that you're generating so much body heat. So I think it was like overcast and probably about 12 degrees for me, and I was still like so hot.
And wind-wise, did you have a favourable wind, or didn't really come into play?
I picked a day that had a slight tailwind. I was going to wait for a better tailwind for my attempt.
Well, I'm sure Tom Stevenson had a better tailwind. Have you checked?
I think he didn't actually. I think he might have had. Well, it's difficult to know in the valleys how the wind's getting like funneled through. I think it was an easterly on the day, which might get funneled into a tailwind.
Okay. Well, I don't want to give away too many trade secrets, but I want to talk through some of the things that you learned for people that are listening that might be keen to give an Everesting attempt, even if it's not for a record. But before we do that, I wanted to ask you, we spoke offline before and you said maybe you might give another attempt a go in a couple of months just to try and get that UK record back again. Mentally, would you pick the same hill? Could you pick the same hill?
Yeah, I think I could definitely pick the same hill, and there'd be pros to doing that because I know now how I would pace it. I know that I wouldn't set off at like 10.5 minute climbs and end up at 12.5 minute climbs. I'd aim for somewhere in the middle, and I know that effort will be about right.
Okay, wow. Well, that's an incredible mental fortitude to go back to the scene of the crime and give it another go again. I'm not sure I could bring myself to do that.
Yeah, there are things that I'd do slightly differently with the climb. I'd pick a slightly different segment because I think I ended up doing 36.2 reps for the climb. I'd pick a segment that let me do exactly 37 and had a slightly steeper average.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you mentioned that steeper average. So if we talk about people that, because I think it's a great thing to do. I need to do an Everest basically. Everyone should give it a go, particularly if lockdown continues. But what are your top tips for people of all abilities who are thinking about maybe giving an Everesting a go?
Oh, you've got me here because I was going to put out my own video doing my top 10 tips. So
okay.
I can't give away all of my secrets right now.
Okay, well, give us one good tip for someone, or how would you persuade someone then to think about giving an Everesting a go?
I'll give you my top 3 because I think that these are probably the most important ones. I'd pick a steep climb and like make sure your gearing is right for that steep climb because that's going to make a massive difference. If you've got a steep enough climb, you're going to be out there for so much less time. And if you've got the right gearing, it isn't going to hurt any more than a shallow climb.
Yeah. What gearing were you using for your attempt?
Well, I'm not really very good on my own bike stuff because other people do it, but I've been told this morning 34 at the front, 30 at the back.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, and I would have liked, I think, slightly higher for that would have been, bigger at the back. I think 32 would have been better because I was feeling that I was grinding at the top, and I've also looked back at my cadence data, and I was for that top section where I was doing really well for height gain per second. I was down at like 45 RPM for 55, which hurts.
37 times. That's going to hurt a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. God, blimey, that's pretty tough. What other top tips can you can recommend for people?
You may have guessed this one from what I previously said, but pick a cool day.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Nothing too hot because that's just going to add to the pressure, right?
Yeah. And eat, like just eat all of the time because there's no way, like, and high carb. So I got the nutrition stuff that Chris Froome used at the last tour, where he did like his amazing stage, and it's got like 2-to-1 glucose fructose mix. Most people that are listening have probably heard about this, but it basically just means your body can absorb more carbohydrate.
Okay, cool. And if you haven't tried it before, it's worth giving a couple of runs before you try your Everesting attempt. Try it out first, because some people it can affect the stomach a little bit, can't it?
Yeah, I had terrible indigestion from like hour 2 onwards. It was digestively, it was a very uncomfortable experience, but I didn't run out of energy towards the end, which I think is probably quite hard to do during an Everesting attempt, because even like with that stuff, there's no way that you can put carbohydrate into your body as fast as you're using it.
Yeah, that's cool. And what about fluids? I mean, how did you fill water bottles up, and how much were you drinking?
I think I was drinking I think I got through 8 bottles. I had my dad refill them. I took 6, but my dad came a bit later on and refilled them for me. I also refilled one.
You only had 8 bottles for the whole, and a bottle an hour, I suppose.
8 to
Doesn't
10,
seem
maybe.
very much. Yeah. Okay.
Probably not. I think my nutrition I got pretty spot on, and I wouldn't recommend people eating more carbohydrates than that. Unless you're significantly heavier. Most people can't digest more than 90 grams anyway, but water I did not drink a lot of. And me and Rory are both, Rory especially is well known for not drinking anything on rides. I'd recommend probably that most people drink more than me on an Everest.
Okay. A good tip. And what about, I mean, were you sort of fastidious in terms of your mechanical setup? I mean, what sort of wheels and bike and tires were you using, or did you just sort of take the bike out and give it a crack?
I just took the back, but this is a big bugbear of Rory's and maybe other of my friends as well, that I didn't do any of that. We'd got plans for like the proper Everest attempt, that I was going to borrow Rory's light wheels and I was going to wear aero kit, etc. I was maybe going to borrow an aero helmet, and I didn't do any of that. I just had my bike as it was.
I love that, Hannah. That's amazing. And it just goes to show, right, with so many people sort of obsessing around marginal gains, that actually you can still go and smash a world record just by jumping in your bike and giving it a crack. Definitely not the most important thing.
Yeah, the most important thing is, I'd say the most important thing, and this won't come as a surprise, is the training in the run-up.
Yeah, so what, just the number of hours you did, or tough rides, or what did the training look like in the run-up?
The training was excellent. The reason that I didn't do the training for the Everest attempt. The reason that I chose to do the Everest attempt was that my training had coincidentally been perfect for it over the past 2 months. My training has basically been going out with Rory for long rides and riding reasonably hard up climbs, so that he's not waiting for too long, but I don't burn myself out, and then getting to the top and being told to eat something so that I can keep going, and then getting on the wheel and Rory just riding hard on the front so that we can make some progress.
Okay, great. So it's like the perfect training storm for an Everest attempt.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And now, Hannah, I've got to ask you, when are you going to make Rory give it a go himself? He's surely got to give an Everesting attempt a go, right?
Yeah, we thought the 740, the previous record, was very doable. So I was trying to persuade him to do it in a couple of months or so. At the moment, he's not doing the right training for it. He's doing harder. He's doing quite a lot of hard efforts with very easy riding in between. So we think it'd be a couple of months of training for him to be in good shape for it. But we're a bit.
He's considering it, is he?
Yeah, although we were definitely very much considering it when the record was 740. I'm looking at the power data on that ride as well. The 733 looks tough.
Yeah, it's next level, isn't it? It's a ridiculous ride. So obviously you and Rory have had some success on the continent with some of the Grand Fondos, both incredible climbers. I know that you are planning on doing some traveling this year, but current situations have sort of curtailed that. What are your sort of racing and riding plans in the future, or is it everything just a little bit too uncertain at the moment to say?
Well, I am quite taken by the Everesting. I do like a long, hard day out on the bike where you're working so hard that you don't have to think about things too much. But I think in terms of it's more difficult to make racing plans involving other people. We're hoping that Taiwan might go ahead. the KOM challenge.
That's October, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's October, isn't it? Yeah. And I think actually there's David Lloyd from Velo Vietnam, who I've had on the podcast before. I think they're looking at doing a KOM in Vietnam as well this year. So you might want to have a little look at that.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
I'll connect you off air. And have you thought about some of these sort of longer gravel races or anything like that? Because that might suit your engine. Or what are your views on doing Dirty Kanza or some of these sort of longer endurance off-road races?
Off-road is something that neither of us have ever ventured into. I think just mainly on account of being very wussy. I know that these are not long rides that would probably be overly technical, but me in particular, like, I'm very bad when it gets a tiny bit technical.
Okay. So you prefer the slick tarmac?
Yeah, I like to be like I like being off road, and obviously I did some fell running when I was younger, and I really liked that. But I kind of like to be on my bike on the slick tarmac or on my feet off the road.
Off the road. Okay, fair enough. Well, you'll absolutely love the tarmac in Taiwan. It seems to be just sort of immaculate everywhere you ride. Even if you just when you land into Taipei, you can go straight out of Taipei up the volcano. It's absolutely like silky smooth roads everywhere, and all the drivers are incredibly friendly and accommodating. It's bizarre. The first time I went there, I was going up a climb and a car sort of slowed up next to me, and I was like, oh, here we go, expecting a bit of abuse from the rider, but they sort of wound their windows down and were sort of cheering me up the climb. So it's a very different environment out there. It's a great place to ride your bike.
It sounds so different to the UK.
Yeah, very different to the UK. Very different to the UK, which is cool. So I tried to coax it out of you a little bit. So you think that you're going to give Everesting another crack? How long does it take to get over such an effort like that? And when do you think you'll be ready physically and mentally to give it another go?
It's quite difficult to tell how much the effort took it out of me physically, because I had some celebratory drinks the day after, and then the day after that I had some more celebratory drinks, and I haven't really been drinking at all for like the past 3 months. Feeling pretty rough, but it's difficult to tell how much is just being hungover and how much is from the Everest attempt.
Okay.
I think for me, the Everest attempt wasn't, because I was so used to doing the long, hard rides. I think it would have maybe taken me like a week, 2 weeks to get over physically.
Okay.
Mentally,
I was just going to say mentally, how is it going? How fresh are you feeling now?
Mentally, I could go out and do it again. I think I don't think it would bother me, like, to just redo the effort. But I wouldn't, because I don't. If I was going to do it to go back for the record, I'd want to do it knowing that I could definitely go faster than I did before, and that kind of that I think requires me to like recover enough to train, do it again, which is a longer process. So I think to recover physically and mentally to do it is like a month maybe for me, but to recover and get better is maybe like 2 months.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's like you want to, I suppose emotionally, you probably just want to get cracking and give it another go, but then you need to sort of be disciplined and restrained and plan the best way forward. When you're sort of beating world tour riders to world records, it's a little bit less emotional, a little bit more scientific, I suppose.
Yeah.
In the planning. So obviously you completed the ride. You had, I think, a little bit of time to wait till it was sort of confirmed the world record. Then what happened? I mean, your whole world must have gone. I mean, obviously you're a very well-known rider, particularly in the Gran Fondo scene, but you basically beaten a succession of world tour riders to a world record. Has your phone been non-stop? What's happened? What's it been like since you broke the record?
I got a lot of Facebook notifications and a lot of Strava notifications and a lot of people following me on Instagram who are going to be sorely disappointed because I never posted anything on Instagram.
Well, but it's and you've had lots of phone calls and have you had reporters calling you up and stuff, or what's been the sort of general? No.
There are a couple of I've had a couple of friends contacted me straight away to try and put me in touch with people from cycling magazines. And then I was waiting for a bit, like the day afterwards, for Cycling Weekly to contact me. And then the cycling tips article came out, followed by like a succession of other articles, which was kind of cool, but didn't actually involve anybody contacting me.
No, so they just it's interesting that I think that's the pressure to get content out so quickly. They don't sort of ask you for a quote, which is bizarre because it's such an interesting story given who you've taken the record from and the background of those riders as well. It's amazing, really.
Yeah, I think I might do. There might be an article coming. So they did get, one of the magazines did get in touch with me after they'd run the initial one to say that they could run it. They might want to feature on it at a later date when they've got space for it. So I think that one might be a bit more in depth.
And would you be tempted to sort of take it? I know that people have done double Everesting attempts, but I spoke to Janto Barker last week on the podcast, and he gave trenching an attempt, which is the height of the Mariana Trench. I think that's Everest plus a third. Would you be tempted to give that a crack and try and make that a bit of a global trend?
Oh, I feel like making it a global. I'd be tempted to give it a crack. I feel like making it a global trend might be difficult.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Oh, I'd also be interested to know how, like, 'cause obviously I don't have a good handle on it due to everything that went on afterwards. I would be interested to know how much more time it takes to recover from an Everest versus like a normal big 6-hour Sunday ride, and then again how much more time it would take to recover from that additional effort, because that might change the way I think about it as well.
Yeah. Think whether it's worth it or not.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to get some scientists to run the numbers over it potentially, to see how that figures out. And have you had interesting sort of race teams sort of reach out to you and say, have you thought about doing some racing or anything like that since the record went?
No, I haven't. A couple of my friends thought that I might do, but it's like haven't done a lot of racing other than the Grand Fondo racing, so I'd be quite a big risk for any team to take on, I think.
Yeah, but I wonder, just to see that obviously you have incredible aerobic talent, and I'm sure there's probably scouts out there thinking, oh, hang on, let's get you into the I don't know, GB team or whatever, or have a little look at you, run the numbers over you, see what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't know. I also guess it's difficult times for any, especially the women's teams that might be injured. Like, I'm never going to be a track rider for GB. Especially for the continental women's team, it's probably not a great time for them to be putting anyone else on their team. If you see what I mean.
Exactly. It's well, financial pressures for the sport as a whole, I think, at the moment, which is difficult. And just your views, just generally on cycling more within the UK and as a female rider, like, what are your views in terms of the increased numbers of people we've seen on the bike, and how do you feel that we can grow the sort of broader participation of cycling within the UK?
Men or women? I think like the uptake by women in the UK and just all over the world in the past like 10 years has been massive as it is.
Yeah. And how can we support that though? Because I've seen it definitely an increase by women as well during lockdown, which is just brilliant to see. But how can we continue to ensure that happens post lockdown and long into the future and continues to grow the sport?
I don't know. I can't say that it's anything that I can't say that it's something that I've massively thought about. I guess it is just, especially in the UK, it is just a direct product of the sport being so successful. So like Team Sky and everything, and just having. I guess that's probably about having an inspiration.
And that's kind of where I was going with the question, really. I think, and that's why it's obviously for you to smash the record. Hopefully, that's incredibly inspiring for women all over the UK just to get on their bikes and not necessarily go for an Everesting world record, but just to show that, you know, it's an enjoyable sport for all. It really should be an enjoyable sport for everyone, and everyone can gain so much of just getting out on the bike. It's such an enjoyable activity and pastime, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess in answer to your original question, it's probably just about having like a good wide variety of role models. So like having Chris Froome and Geraint Thomas win the Tour is obviously great for like a subset, like as a role model for a subset of guys that just want to get out and ride their bikes hard. But it's good to have people like doing, like normal people doing longer Everest attempts. And then Probably it's good to. It's like there's a whole other which I don't really see that much of. I don't know how much of it you see, but there's a whole other growing culture of like more people, just more women, especially just getting out on easy social rides and like this girl can. And I think that's really important too, and we should be supporting that as well.
Yeah, no, that's essentially what I mean. It's not about breaking world records. It's just enjoying everything that the bike gives you, even if that's just, you know, cutting out the car for the short 2 mile commute and jumping on the bike to, you know, go see your friends or whatever. I think there's so much to be gained, and hopefully we can see that transition post lockdown. I think it'd be brilliant to see that.
Yeah, I hope that generally although I don't know how much of this will happen, I would hope that generally post lockdown we could move towards a bit more of an active, less like yes, and more active, less commuting, maybe like a little bit less pressure and rigidity at work. I think all of that would help, just giving people like the mental space to spend a bit more time getting active, and that would probably feed back into like us being a bit more productive and healthier as a society.
Yeah, it's trying to break that catch-22 actually, when people look after their own mental welfare and their own physical body as well, that they're actually probably more productive in the workplace. So it's just trying to hopefully use that. Is cycling therapeutic for you, as well as obviously using it from a physical training perspective? Do you get a lot? You say you're normally a thinker on the bike. Is it your escape? Is that what you use cycling for as well?
Yeah, it's therapeutic to an extent. Once you start to get into the real performance side of cycling, that's one of the things that I find hardest about the performance, is that you do lose some of that. The more that you focus on the performance, you lose some of that therapeutic effect. Me, a big part of the therapeutic effect of being on the bike is just that you're just going out. You're not worrying about anything. You're just outside, and it's nice. And obviously, the minute that performance comes into that, you start to be a little bit. You're thinking about that basically.
It's hard to retain it, isn't it, when you've got to do
Yeah.
so many efforts, the next zone or that effort for that long. It kind of changes the dynamic somewhat, which is hard to retain that balance. But I think that was one of the issues that, again, talking about Everesting record going yesterday, Lachlan Morton, I think when he first got onto the world tour, I think he struggled with that transition to being so rigid and scientific, and he kind of lost what he fell in love with the sport by in the first place, really.
Yeah, that's interesting. And he seems like an interesting guy, because he does seem like he's now found like a good balance of like
Yeah.
obviously competing at an incredibly high level, but like he does some other stuff which looks really interesting, and probably it's like a lot more therapeutic than the.
Yeah, definitely, and I think he's helping grow the sport as well. He's inspirational, and I think it's easy not to appreciate that, but it's important. And I know Johnny Waters has come out and said that, you know, we need heroes and people to aspire to, which is exactly what you said. I mean, even I've got 2 young daughters, and obviously when Rory messaged me and told me about you breaking the record, I was able to tell them, and you probably don't appreciate just that knock-on effect. There was sort of completely in awe about it, and they had sort of 1,000 questions for me to ask, you know, how you did it and stuff like that. So I think it, having people that do amazing things is a great way to inspire younger people to pick up the bike, or just to get outside, get out from in front of the television and go play outside and go exercise and go and do all these different things.
Yeah, I think it's good to have. I've found people coming out of the pro peloton in the past couple of years, like Lachlan Morton and other people that just look like they might be doing like a hell of a lot of hard training, but they also just look like they're not taking it like maybe as seriously as someone like Chris Froome, but they're just like really like they're working hard and they're really enjoying it. I find that quite inspiring.
Yeah, no, it is inspiring. Well, have I missed anything else? Is there anything that you wanted to? I tend to go off on tangents and get a little bit lost. So, is there anything that I've forgotten to mention, or anything you'd like to bring up yourself?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. So recovery now, and then potentially looking to get back into another effort in 2 months' time. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Will you let us know how you're getting on?
Yeah, hopefully no women or UK men, although that might be less. Yeah, that might be more to be expected, that a UK man might put it out of reach. But Hopefully a woman doesn't put it out of reach for me.
It's a hard target. You beat the previous record by, was it 50 minutes?
49.
49 minutes. So I mean, to talk about nudging the record forward, that's a big kick down the road, not a nudge forward. So it's an incredible effort. Huge congratulations again. I think, I think in a world where we haven't got racing to follow and watch, which is because, really with the racing calendar, both the men's and women's races, it becomes how you mark your year, really. You've sort of, the spring classics are coming and the tours in July and all this kind of stuff. So to have all these Everest attempts and all these different things, it's quite fun to watch. And I think it's good for us all to see the bar being pushed further and further down the line.
Yeah.
Maybe. So race wheels and aero suit for the next attempt?
Yeah, I think so. Not a cool aero suit, not one with long sleeves.
Actually, that reminds me. We'll have to have a think about an aero suit. But obviously, I haven't said thank you very much. You completed the record in your Unfound top.
Oh yeah, I love it. It's like it was my favourite jersey for a while, but I've since bought one that I really like, so they're competing now. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, but we're very proud to have had you worn the jersey for the world record. I should have mentioned that earlier in the podcast, but no, it's awesome to see. Thank you.
Although I did get quite a lot of one of the problems that I came across with my nutrition was like getting things out of the wrapper. So I ended up just putting them in my back pocket, not in the wrapper. So the jersey isn't in such good shape as it was pre-Everest attempt.
Okay, well, that's good to know. We're actually in the process of thinking out about potentially bringing out a new kit. So we'll have to, once we got that, we'll have to get you a set to represent.
Ah, great. That's what I was nudging for.
Yeah, I should have picked up that a little bit quicker. But okay, cool. We'll get that out to you. Hannah, I know you're, as well as sort of training, you're also working at the moment as well. So I really appreciate you taking the time to stop by and have a bit of a chat with us, and do send our best to Rory as well. We should get Rory on the podcast and put a little bit more pressure on him, giving the men's record an attempt in the next few weeks as well.
Yeah, I'll let him know.
Good. Excellent. All right. Enjoy your riding. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. And please, let's catch up soon, yeah?
Okay. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Hannah. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast. And more importantly, don't forget to download the Unfound app and join cyclists from around the world on the Hub. We'll see you on there.